Alrighty, so this is my box of Waltham size 6 pocket watch movements. Anything with scratches on the plates or plating that's damaged and just not a good candidate for restoration has already been culled out. They're all vacuum sealed, so they're all good projects. So let's pick one at random here and see what we get. And it looks like we got quite a project actually. Pretty much any of these would have been less work. We could pick another one, like that one would be great, or this one, but let's go ahead and restore this one. Like I said, they're all good projects. Let's get her open, see what we have. Slip on some finger cots first. Should you be interested in buying a watch like this, there are QR codes throughout the video at the top right corner of the screen and also at the very end that you can scan with your phone, or you can check the video description and find a link there to my store. So zooming in on this here, first thing that jumps out at me is I see that it's missing the regulator, which is no big deal. I've got plenty of those. There's actually something missing here that I didn't notice until quite a few minutes from now. So go ahead and if you see it, drop it in the comments, and I'll tell you about that in a couple minutes here. Obviously it's got a bent balance rim. It's missing the casing screws and got a couple chewed up screws. We'll replace those. Here we got a broken off pinion on the center wheel. It's missing the cannon pinion, minute wheel, hour wheel. Somehow managed to keep its seconds pinion in place, which is usually the first thing to break. And obviously we're missing the dial on the hands also. So these are my spare parts here. I know I don't have any good dials. I've picked through them plenty of times. I'm going to go ahead and find a donor movement which has a good dial and hands and most of the parts I need. Use that to start with. This one's got a good dial. Both of its hands are there. It's a 7 jewel movement that's missing a bridge, so it's a good donor. Missing balance and quite a few other parts. I see the casing screws are there, so we just need the regulator, it looks like. We'll find one of those in here. I see one there, but I'm just jumping over that one. It's rusty. This one has broken off pins on the bottom, so we're not going to use that one. That one could work, but it's a little rusty and could take quite a bit of polishing. There's a good regulator on this balance cock here, so we'll use that one. So this is a look at the movement under the microscope. As I said, the plates are in good condition. Everything else can be replaced. Let's take a look at this balance real quick. The balance staff is actually okay. It's just the rim that is bent. So let's give that a little pull and see if it pops. Definitely not healthy. We can bend and work on that, but it's going to be really tough to get it poised in all positions and keep good time. We have so many donor parts for these. I'm going to go ahead and just scrap that whole balance and replace it. I'm going to let down the power and the mainspring here so we can start disassembling this watch. And as I insert it, I feel no spring back. Usually when you insert a crown or crown tool, you'd feel the keyless work springing back on you on these movements, but there's no spring back, so something's stuck or broken in the keyless works. So we'll figure that out once we get in there. But I still haven't noticed, and I'm going to right now, that there's a few missing parts still that somebody has started scavenging from this watch. If you notice the pallet fork, pallet bridge, pallet screws, you can see that they're all missing. And in a minute here I'll take out the balance wheel, and somebody's taken the roller table and its jewel off of the balance also. So pretty much somebody scavenged the entire escapement out of this watch to put into a different watch at some time. So we'll need to replace those, but since we need to balance anyway, we'll find another of my 15 jewel movements, because the movement that we already started picking from is a 7 jewel, and it's not going to have a jewel in that pallet bridge. So we'll find a 15 jewel movement and scavenge the rest of those parts off in a minute here. The serial number on the bottom of the balance cock matches the movement, which is nice. You can't really see here off the screen, but the balance is missing its roller table, you can see there. So yeah, this is not a good balance to work with, so we'll scrap this one altogether. And I'm checking the end shake, but there's no reason to check the end shake on the center wheel because it's broken on the pinion anyway. But the end shake on the barrel is actually really tight, and in the winding mechanism, which means this movement actually didn't get used too much before it got scrapped, which will be nice. It'll run well. So let's go ahead and tear this guy down and get her in the cleaner, find the missing parts we need. Again, the serial number on the bottom side of that bridge matches the movement. We'll disassemble the mainspring barrel here, but I'm going to end up replacing this mainspring with a white alloy mainspring, which I do on all of these Waltham size 6s. And here somebody has stuffed the wrong mainspring into this barrel. It's way too long. We'll pull that out in a minute. And pull out our broken center wheel here, and the rest of the train, which all looks good. Now here, there should be a spring right here. It's missing altogether, so we'll find one of those. Keyless works on these is a little different from modern movements. Outside of the keyless works, really nothing has changed in watchmaking since the 1890s when this was made, even since the 1850s. Not too long after the age of pocket watches, probably in the 1930s or so, the keyless works got pretty standardized to what's modern. But the fact that the keyless works are different doesn't affect anything. We just have our own little modification we do to the case to work with these pocket watch movements, and we get to save these beautiful movements, display them underneath a sapphire crystal in the case back, and have a beautiful timepiece which keeps good time. I would say compares to any modern $4,000 watch. Stick around till the end and you'll see what we come up with. All these parts look good. This one did end up taking quite a few parts to restore, but parts are plentiful, so that's not a problem. All these movements I have all got pulled from their cases because there are so many years that these had no value because they're so plentiful. Waltham made over 1 million Waltham size 6 pocket watch movements, and pretty much all of them just got scrapped between the 1950s when pocket watches went out of fashion, and now that gold and precious metals are so valuable, the refineries just pull these movements out and dump them and melt down the cases for their gold and silver. So there's 1 million movements out there that just have either been completely thrown away or are just sitting in scrap piles, which leave us plenty of parts and movements to make a whole lot of beautiful retro-modded watches. And these size 6 movements are the perfect size to make a 40mm wristwatch, which is pretty much a standard size watch these days. This here is our donor movement, which has got a nice dial on it, a nice set of hands. So I'm gonna set the hands to a spot here where I can get them off. The dial on these watches is enamel, which is only found on high-end watches these days. Back in the 1890s it was the norm. It was just the way dials are made, and the nice thing about the enamel is they're eternal. They don't patina, they don't degrade. So once they're cleaned up and the watch is restored, it basically has the appearance of being a new watch, and it's literally 120 years old. Couldn't take off that second sand. It was smashed down against the dial, so I just pulled it off along with the dial. So let's scavenge these parts I need. Hour wheel, minute wheel, canyon pinion. We need that center wheel out of there. Need to let the power down on this movement, so this is done with pushing the pin in there and then backing off the power on the winding crown there. So I need these casing screws also. That's one. And that's the other. I'm gonna grab some of these movement screws also, because the ones in the movement we're restoring they're a little chewed up on the heads. We'll fast forward through the rest of this as it's not too relevant. And there's our center wheel that we need. and that spring that we're missing in the keyless works. Now here's a 15 joule movement that has oxidation kind of boiling through the nickel plating on the movement. This will never be a beautiful movement to be shown underneath an exhibition sapphire glass case back, so we'll get our balance wheel and our pallet fork, pallet bridge screws, and go ahead and use this regulator, all from this movement. Everything looks to be in good condition there. That balance does need a new staff, so we'll replace the balance staff. This pallet fork, when I tested it in the movement it's going into, the pivot didn't fit through the jewel. So we're going to burnish this pivot a little bit just to reduce its diameter so that it fits into the jewel and the main plate of the movement it's going into. It won't take much. Forgive the focus on the camera there, it came in and went out for a second, but we got the information we needed. So we just give it a few little scrubs, reducing the diameter of that pivot. And that's all we needed to get it to fit into our movement. We're going to need to replace the staff on this balance wheel. We'll start by putting it in the staking block here and gently removing the hairspring. I'm marking the location of the stud on the hairspring so we can put it back in the same place when we're done, which will pretty much leave the balance end beat, but we'll probably have to true that up a little bit afterward. Again, I'll mark the location of the roller jewel so that we can put the balance in beat, and these Sharpie marks will wash right off in the ultrasonic cleaner when it's washing. So now we'll remove the roller table. This camera I'm using does not have a microphone, so you'll have to imagine the noise is not. It just takes a quick tap to knock that roller table off. That was it. Now we will drive the balance staff out of the balance. The balance staff is riveted in, so the balance needs to be well supported so it doesn't get bent out of flat when you're doing this. I tapped it a couple of times there and probably should have tapped it one more time to drive it the rest of the way out, but I figured instead of getting rough with it, I would just manually pull it out. And that's the balance staff removed. And so this is the new balance staff going in. I'm going to start with a rounded punch, which will open up the rivet on that new staff and fix it in place. I'll tap it and rotate and tap it and rotate a few times to make sure pressure gets applied from every angle. Now the balance staff is fixed in place, but we'll use a flat punch to flatten that rivet out a little bit more. Twisting it a couple times again. So here we're just test fitting the balance so we can make sure it spins freely and flat, and we can proceed. And as you can see, with a little puff of air, it spins freely in both directions, nice and flat, no wobbles. I'm going to go ahead and poise it while I have it out also. And we're going to find this heavy spots and either add or subtract weight from that side or the opposite to make sure that it doesn't have any heavy or light spots that will cause timing issues in different positions. That's a whole video to itself, which I'm going to be posting pretty soon, so it's about an hour's worth of work that we're not going to watch here. And now we're going to drive on the roller table, which has the roller jewel sticking out of it, which means we need to use a special punch that has a slit which interacts with that roller jewel and allows us to push on the metal without pushing on that ruby jewel that would shatter if it were hit. And again, I've lined that roller jewel up with my Sharpie mark. Make sure we get this back in beat. Now I'm going to flip over that same stake and use it again. This time as an anvil, so that we can slide on the hairspring. And luckily, I just got the hairspring on before the video of this got corrupted. You'll see in a second that we get some corruption on the screen and we lose it, but that was the last of the balance staff installation. Here's the old staff above the new staff. You can see the longer pivot and the size of them compared to a typical match. So here I'm going to polish up the chatons on the jewels, and then I'm going to polish each of the screws individually, which I'm not going to show here because again that's another hour of video that I'm going to make a video on eventually on flat polishing screws, but this video is going to be an hour already with all of the time compression I'm adding into it. Probably spend 2 days on one of these complete resto mod size 6 pocket watch movements that I recase into wristwatch form, including the casework, which again I'm not going to show the casework in this video. This is the mechanical end of it. I have a couple of other videos showing some of the casework. You can check my past videos and see some of that. So I had left the balance jewels in the balance cock and in the main plate so that I could test fit the balance after putting the new staff in. Now that we've done that, need to pull them out so they can get clean along with everything else when I add this all to the watch cleaning machine. And here's the jewels coming out of the pallet cock. No cracked or broken jewels in this one, which is nice. That's a lot of work to replace. Now here's this crazy mainspring coming out of the barrel. It's way too long. I don't know what. It's also way too heavy. I don't know what this came from. I wouldn't be surprised if the reason the escapement was missing in this watch was because it was all broken. Probably had broken the jewels from overbanking. The spring probably pushed that balance so hard that it was cracking the rubies, but it was stuffed in there by hand, and you can see it came out cone shaped. It's not even a flat spring anymore, but I replaced these anyway with modern white alloy springs, which are quite a bit better technologically. They don't get set and they release more evenly over time, which promotes better timekeeping. Normally you wouldn't pull these screws out, but I'm going to polish them and then I'm going to blue these. I prefer the look of blued screws on these, and since this is a resto mod anyway on a movement that's been scrapped, we're going to blue these screws, give a little extra pop when you look at the movement through the sapphire case back. And also bluing adds corrosion resistance, which really won't be relevant since it's going to be in a waterproof case and airtight. They didn't rust in the last 120 years in the pocket watch case. They're definitely not going to rust in the new case we're going to use. So here's all of our parts all cleaned up and laid out straight out of the watch cleaning machine. We're going to take our polished and cleaned screws and drop them onto this brass plate. This brass plate will serve to distribute the heat evenly over all these screws so they all heat to the same temperature. Heating these screws will blue them. The color will physically change on these screws as they develop an oxide layer, and they will be blued. This bluing is both aesthetically pleasing and it also increases the rust resistance of these screws. I typically don't blue screws on rare movements or movements that are all original, but since this is a resto mod, we're going to add the aesthetic bluing. And as you can see here, they start turning brown, and then we start watching closely and slow down, and they'll go through several different color changes before they get to the shade of deep blue that I like. A lot of watchmakers will pass this shade of deep blue and go to what they call cornflower blue, because the cornflower is a lot easier to hit. It's a wider temperature band that nets you that blue, that cornflower blue color. But I stop right here at this deep purplish blue. I think it looks better. The reassembly of this movement is very straightforward since we've already sorted out all the missing and broken parts. I'm going to stop talking for a while and let you listen to some classical music while you watch it all come together. I'll be back a little bit later on. Should you be interested in buying a watch like this, there are QR codes throughout the video at the top right corner of the screen, and also at the very end that you can scan with your phone, or you can check the video description and find a link there to my store. So now we're going to case up this movement, put it into my case here, which again is quite a bit of work to make this case, which was done off camera. And there's a little special technology there in the winding crown, which makes that integrated winding crown in the case work with the old style pocket watch keyless works. Well, we'll go ahead and pop on our sapphire crystal here on the front, and the back crystal is sapphire also, by the way. In pressure testing the watch, we suspend the watch above the water, increase the air pressure to 3 atmospheric pressure, and let it soak for about 2 minutes to let any air seep into the watch. And then we drop the watch below water level, release the pressure, and if there's excess pressure in the watch, it will bubble out through the leak. That will tell us where the leak is. Since we have no bubbles, we have no leaks, and we're good to go with this one. Now we're going to put on our watch strap. You can order additional colors and different bands if you want to be able to change it up and just match your belt and shoes and have a watch for all occasions. You see it winds and sets. It's like a normal watch. And that's the watch complete. Now we'll put this on a timing machine and see how it's doing. As you can see, our beat error is 0.3, 0.4, which is exceptional. A beat error of 1 millisecond is really good on a modern, even a new Rolex would be fine. On vintage watches, 2 milliseconds is fine, and this is at 1/4 of a millisecond. Amplitude was at about 240, 250, which is perfectly acceptable for vintage watches, especially anything from the 1890s when they would have considered anything at 200 amplitude to be just fine. And now we'll box it up in our presentation case we send all these in. There's a spot for a couple of extra bands if you want to put them in there, and that is a winding tool for people who have trouble winding a watch. That'll help get a little better grip on it. Thank you for your interest. Please like and subscribe if you want to get notified of future releases of videos, and look forward to seeing you on the next one.